to face the unknown and ponder the question. What if?
Hello, and welcome everyone. The doors of possibility in the Marvel Cinematic Universe have been blown bloody well off, thanks to the multiverse. Marvel's What If made its appearance as the first animated show in the MCU. In this video, we are going to do a full recap of What If Season 1, so I hope you catch up with the story if you missed the show, or if you need a refresher. The series introduces us to 8 different universes in the Marvel Multiverse. Each of these universes is a little different, leading to a very different timeline. We go through these multiple universes with the Watcher, who is a Multiversal Marvel character and is one of the most powerful beings in the MCU. The different universes introduce us to new variants of the superheroes like Strange Supreme, whom we see in Doctor Strange 2 teaser trailer. In the series finale, the Watcher finally assembles the Guardians of the Multiverse to fight MCU's first multiversal threat. So let's get into it. But before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that out of the way, let's get started with the video. Episode 1 revisits the events of Captain America: The First Avenger, where things go down a different path for Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers. As the Watcher himself says, reality is more than a linear path. It's a prism of endless possibilities, where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities, creating alternate worlds from the ones you know. As Steve Rogers is about to get the super soldier serum and Peggy Carter is asked to leave the room. But in this universe, Peggy chooses to stay, and this changes everything. The Hydra agent blows the place sooner than he does in the movie, and he shoots Steve Rogers. Steve cannot go through with the experiment, so Peggy jumps into the chamber herself. The experiment is successful, and Peggy receives the super soldier abilities. Steve's bullet wound was not fatal, so he's still around. He remains tiny in stature, but that doesn't mean he no longer wants to serve. The Tesseract plays an important role here too, as Peggy is tracking it to stop the war. Howard Stark provides her with a suit and also a shield. Captain Carter joins the mission to retrieve the Tesseract and successfully retrieves it from the Hydra base. Steve Rogers gets a Tesseract-powered Proto-Iron Man suit that Howard Stark created for him. In this universe, Bucky survives because Peggy saves him. A captured Zola tells Carter about Red Skull's summoning plan, which he can now make possible as he has regained the Tesseract. She storms into his Hydra castle and lays everyone out. Red Skull opens a portal and out comes his champion. It's a giant tentacle thing, and it is very reminiscent of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3. The monster kills Red Skull just as Bucky finds Steve, who is still alive. Steve demands to be put in his suit. The tentacle monster spreads and looks to eventually cover all of Europe. Howard Stark is the one who has to find a solution to this problem. Meanwhile, Captain Carter grabs a sword to fight the monster and ends up having to personally push the tentacle beast back into the portal. Howard and Steve are left alone. The portal does open again, but it is 70 years later. Captain Carter and bits of tentacle emerge to find Nick Fury, who tells her that the war ended 70 years ago. Just like that, Captain Carter is the person who is now out of her time. As the Watcher notes at the end, her one choice gave birth to a whole new history and gave the multiverse a new hero.
What you call destiny is just an equation, a product of variables. Right place, right time. Or in some instances, the wrong place at the wrong time.
Continuing the saga, in What If Episode 2, we see the story of T'Challa with some genius tweaks. The curiosity of the young prince of Wakanda guides him to the grandiose exploration of the universe. The effects of such an alteration are pristine, with a remarkable portrayal of Thanos and Nebula. Kicking things off with a riff on the opening sequence of 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy, the episode begins with Star-Lord in pursuit of the Power Stone. Only things got a little better for this version of the Outlaw. After running into Korath the Pursuer, who is a big fan of his work, T'Challa gets away with the orb holding the Infinity Stone, with some help from his trusted ally, Yondu. The origins of this version of Star-Lord, who much like the MCU original T'Challa was an adventurous child. After his father, T'Chaka, tells him to temper his excitement for exploring, T'Challa ends up in the fields of Wakanda just as a Ravager spaceship arrives on Earth. But as the Watcher explains, instead of taking on the mission to find Ego's son himself, in this reality, Yondu sends Kraglin and Taserface, who end up picking up T'Challa. Back in the present day, T'Challa and the Ravagers head to a galactic waterhole to celebrate their latest score. And among those at the party is the Mad Titan himself, who reveals Star-Lord helped him learn there was more than one way to reallocate the universe's resources. T'Challa runs into Nebula, who informs him of a potential job. Nebula wants the Ravagers to steal the embers of Genesis, which was nutrient-rich cosmic dust from an ancient supernova with the power to terraform entire ecosystems. After convincing Yondu to accept the mission, T'Challa and the Ravagers arrive on Nowhere, the Collector's home. In this universe, the Black Order works for the Collector rather than Thanos. Yondu, T'Challa, and Nebula sneak in by pretending to be potential clients, while Thanos and Korath cause a distraction outside. T'Challa begins searching for the embers when he runs into Howard the Duck, who he recruits as his tour guide. Back outside, Proxima Midnight makes quick work of the Ravagers and sounds the base's alarm after realizing they're being used as a distraction. After ditching Howard the Duck, who was only interested in drinking, T'Challa stumbles upon a Wakandan ship that houses a message from his father, who's still searching for him. Unfortunately, before he can process the bombshell, T'Challa is double-crossed by Nebula. The Ravagers are all placed in a holding cell, where T'Challa is able to confront Yondu about the lies he told him. But just as the discussion begins, Corvus Glaive comes to collect T'Challa and bring him to the Collector. Thankfully, Nebula breaks the Ravagers out and reveals the whole mission was a ruse to steal the embers right out from the Collector's nose. However, the Collector catches wind of the ruse and attacks T'Challa using iconic weapons from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including Hela's Necro Sword. With their leader busy, the Ravagers try to escape, only to be met by the Black Order, and Thanos decides to take them on alone. The Mad Titan begins to lose the battle, but Nebula arrives just in the nick of time and helps her father make quick work of their former allies. Meanwhile, T'Challa frees all the captives held by the Collector and decides to visit Earth to meet his real family in Wakanda. The Ravagers accompany him to meet Wakandans, but while it's a happy ending for them, the same can't be said for the original Star-Lord, Peter Quill. In the end, the episode features Ego and Peter Quill meeting for the first time as Ego arrives at a Dairy Queen to meet his son. Ego might deceive Quill and take advantage of his loneliness and naivete to feed his ulterior motives. Episode 3 returns to explore the universe in which Nick Fury fails to get the Avengers Initiative off the ground.
Where humans see chaos, I see the crucible that would transform this collection of individuals into a team of heroes. At least, that's how things played out in one universe. But in this one...
Things begin on a Monday during Iron Man 2, just as Nick Fury attempts to recruit Tony Stark into the Avengers Initiative at the donut shop. However, when Black Widow injects Iron Man with a serum that will allow him to fight his illness, Tony Stark instead drops dead. The Watcher then explains that, while the events of Fury's big week were the catalyst that would form the Avengers, this reality takes a different turn. On Tuesday, Agent Coulson finds Mjolnir in New Mexico. But Fury can't come immediately, as he is overseeing Black Widow's transfer to Alexander Pierce, who wants to interrogate her. Nick Fury informs Natasha that he knows she wasn't involved with Tony's death, and it was someone else who was pulling the strings. Back in New Mexico, Hawkeye and Fury discuss the Mjolnir just as the God of Thunder arrives to reclaim his weapon. And the events play out similar to the events of the first Thor movie, except for this time Hawkeye's arrow hits Thor in the heart. Clint Barton claims he didn't fire the shot, but when Fury goes into his cell to talk to him, Hawkeye was dead under mysterious circumstances. It's now Wednesday, and Natasha heads to Culver University to talk to Betty Ross, who she knows can help her uncover what killed Tony. After Betty discovers a small projectile was the cause of the Iron Man's death, Fury calls Natasha and warns her that the members of the Avengers Initiative are being targeted. She finds Bruce Banner in Betty's office and informs him that they need to run. Meanwhile, Coulson witnesses the Bifrost arrive on Earth and bring the forces of Asgard, including Loki. But just as Fury heads out to confront them, Natasha calls from Virginia, where Thunderbolt Ross has arrived to take out the Hulk. Banner is promptly shot by a mysterious bullet and loses control, while Loki lays waste to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s forces. However, as the Hulk fights Ross' forces, he explodes, marking the death of another potential Avenger. Meanwhile, back in New Mexico, Loki gives Fury one day to find his brother's killer. Without any leads, Natasha is investigating the Avenger Initiative's files when an invisible assailant attacks her. Natasha leaves a message for Fury that claims Hope is at the bottom of the murders, which prompts Nick Fury to talk to Loki. Fury then heads to Hope Van Dyne's grave in San Francisco, where he finds Hank Pym. Hank reveals that after his daughter's death, he swore revenge against Fury. So much so, he devised a plan to destroy his life's work by killing the Avengers. A conflict between the two ensues, and while it's clear Fury has the upper hand, something is clearly off. It turns out Loki accompanied Fury on his mission and helped him defeat Pym using his magical abilities. However, after their victory, Loki decides to stay on Earth, and, without the Avengers to stop him, he takes over the Earth by the next day. Thankfully, Fury still has a plan to save this world, as he recruits Carol Danvers and finds Steve Rogers to once again make the Avengers a reality. Episode 4 delivers an alternate origin story for Doctor Strange.
In this universe, Stephen Strange didn't lose his hands, but his heart.
This universe explores a much different transformation for Stephen Strange. Things kick off with Dr. Stephen Strange picking up Dr. Christine Palmer for an event, where he will be celebrated for successfully performing a difficult surgery. Similar to 2016's Doctor Strange, Palmer and Strange get into a brutal car crash. But this time, Strange loses Palmer instead of his hands. After Dr. Palmer's death, Strange travels the whole world to learn the mystic arts. Soon, he learns the skills to become Doctor Strange and defeats Dormammu with his powers. However, he still hasn't made peace with Palmer's death. 2 years after her death, Strange is contemplating using his powers to go back in time and save Palmer. Although Wong and the Ancient One warn him against it. Anyways, he goes back in time and tries to avoid the car crash. However, the car crash still happens and kills Palmer. Strange goes back in time over and over again to change the events that led to the car crash but fails every time. The Ancient One approaches Strange and tells him that Dr. Palmer's death was an absolute point in time that led to Strange learning the mystic arts and gaining his powers. The absolute point cannot be changed without destroying the entire reality. However, Strange disagrees with the Ancient One and goes on to find Sorcerer Cagliostro. While he was trying to leave, the Ancient One attacks him and splits the current reality. Strange finds Sorcerer Cagliostro and gets access to his library. He goes through multiple books to learn that he actually needs to absorb power from other very powerful creatures to reverse the absolute point in time. Strange summons some of the most powerful creatures and starts absorbing their power. This goes on for several years. After becoming the extremely powerful Doctor Strange Supreme, he notices Cagliostro is on the deathbed. Doctor Strange Supreme suggests that he will turn back time to save him, but Cagliostro stops him and says that death is a part of being a sorcerer. In the other reality, Strange decides against going down the path of time travel to save Palmer. However, he sees his reality being destroyed due to Doctor Strange Supreme's actions. The Ancient One approaches Strange to inform about the misguided version of him that needs to be stopped. Doctor Strange Supreme finds Strange and brings him to the point in the time where the car crash kills Palmer. Strange Supreme tells him that he needs to absorb his powers to reverse the absolute point in time. Strange resists, leading to an epic fight sequence between him and Strange Supreme. However, Doctor Strange loses the fight, and Strange Supreme manages to absorb him and reverse the absolute point in time. Palmer comes back to life, but the reality itself starts collapsing around them. Doctor Strange Supreme tries to save her but fails again. He begs the Watcher to fix the reality, but the Watcher couldn't do it, at the risk of destroying other realities. Eventually, the reality gets destroyed, which kills Palmer again. The universe in Episode 5 features zombie versions of iconic Marvel characters such as Iron Man, Captain America, Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, and more.
Dr. Hank Pym journeyed into the quantum realm searching for his long-lost wife. But in this universe, Janet Van Dyne contracted a quantum virus that corrupted her brain. Oof.
It opens with Bruce Banner crashing into Earth as Hulk. He is there to warn about the arrival of Thanos. However, after reaching Earth, Banner notices that the place is already mostly abandoned. Thanos arrives and tries to kill Banner, who is unable to transform into Hulk. A portal opens up, which brings Iron Man, Captain America, Doctor Strange, and One just in time to save Banner. Banner notices something strange about the Avengers. Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Captain America, and One have all become zombies. Fortunately, he is saved by Spider-Man, Hope Van Dyne, and Doctor Strange's cloak. They take Banner to a hideout, where he meets Bucky and Sharon Carter. Hope explains to Banner that Hank Pym traveled to the quantum realm to bring back Janet Van Dyne, but Janet was infected with the quantum virus that turned her into a zombie. Janet attacked Hank to turn him into a zombie, and they both bring the virus to Earth. Scott Lang becomes their first victim, and the virus started spreading rapidly. Things got worse when the Avengers decided to help out and got infected themselves. The team receives a report that there is a cure for the virus at a camp. On their journey to the camp, Hope gets infected, and decides to sacrifice herself to allow the group to avoid a fight with hordes of zombies. After reaching camp, they discover that Vision and Scott Lang's heads had been hiding from the zombies. Vision found out that the Mind Stone had the potential to cure the virus. However, Vision was hiding a dark secret. He was holding a zombie version of Wanda, who resisted the cure with her powerful chaos magic. After being confronted by Bruce Banner, Vision decides to do the right thing and give Spider-Man his Mind Stone. Spider-Man and Scott Lang somehow escape and try to reach Wakanda to transmit the power of Mind Stone to the entire world. Meanwhile, Bucky gets killed while trying to fight Wanda. The episode ends on a dark note, as Thanos too has turned into a zombie and has gathered 5 Infinity Stones, and he is waiting in Wakanda for the arrival of the 6th stone. So it goes without saying that in this universe Thanos probably got what he wanted.
Every journey has a beginning, but change one step along the way, and you could end up at a very different destination.
The 6th episode begins with the opening scene of 2008's Iron Man, where Tony Stark is attacked by terrorists in Afghanistan. Unlike the movie, Killmonger saves Tony Stark and helps him get to safety. This causes Tony to never develop the mini-arc reactor, and thus he never becomes the Iron Man. In a press conference after this incident, Killmonger shares that he gathered more intel about the attack using his Navy SEAL background. He reveals documents that implicate Obadiah Stane, who was the villain in 2008's Iron Man. Impressed by his abilities, Stark promotes Killmonger to Stark Industries' Chief Operating Officer. However, Pepper Potts is suspicious of Killmonger's true intentions. After gaining Stark's trust, Killmonger asks him to help build an anime-inspired automatic drone that runs on vibranium. Stark sends Rhodey to purchase vibranium from Ulysses Klaue, but the deal goes south after Black Panther attacks Klaue's guards. Killmonger arrives on the scene with Stark's tech and kills T'Challa as well as Rhodey. Stark finds out about what happened with the help of Jarvis and he builds a drone to kill Killmonger. But he easily outclasses the drone and kills Tony in the process. Killmonger then uses Stark's death to orchestrate a war between the US and Wakanda. After Klaue helps Killmonger reach Wakanda, Killmonger kills Klaue and uses him as a peace offering for Wakanda. He gets an audience with King T'Chaka and warns him about the war with the US. Killmonger defeats his own drones alongside the Dora Milaje. After the war, Killmonger wins over the trust of T'Chaka, and thus the king makes him the next Black Panther. Back in the Stark Industries headquarters, the US is preparing to attack Wakanda again. The young and genius Shuri managed to sneak into the headquarters, where she meets Pepper and tells her that Killmonger has killed Stark and T'Challa. The episode ends with a cliffhanger, where Shuri and Pepper seem to begin planning to stop Killmonger.
More than battles won or lost, it's relationships that truly define a hero. The people who shaped them, their stories.
The 7th episode begins with Odin returning Loki to the Frost Giants instead of raising Loki himself. This allows Thor to be their only child. In Asgard, Thor tells his mother Frigga that he would stay home and study after she goes out to enjoy the solstice. However, after Frigga leaves, Thor gathers his friends and makes his way to Las Vegas. Back on Earth, Dr. Jane Foster and Darcy are trying to warn the government about an alien invasion on Earth. But Thor and his friends have already reached Las Vegas and threw a massive party on a universal scale. Major characters from the MCU including the Grandmaster, Gorr, Nebula, Drax, Yondu, Howard the Duck, Loki, and the Frost Giants, and more attend the party thrown by the Party Prince of Asgard. Jane and Darcy reach the location and they party all night. Darcy gets married to Howard the Duck and Jane fall in love with Thor. It was all going well until S.H.I.E.L.D. knocks on Jane's door the next morning. Various characters after getting drunk at the party start to various Earth monuments. The party atmosphere had started spreading from Vegas to many parts of the world. To avoid further catastrophe, S.H.I.E.L.D. started interrogating Jane and Darcy. Acting director Maria Hill had started considering the nuclear option and called Captain Marvel to stop Thor. After being defeated by Thor once, Captain Marvel returns with even more power. Jane and Darcy decide to help Thor by calling Heimdall with her tech. Jane reaches Asgard and meets Frigga to tell her about Thor. As Thor realizes his mother is visiting Earth, he somehow convinces everyone to fix up Earth. By the time Frigga arrives, Thor and his guests have cleaned up the place. The episode ends with Thor asking out Jane on a date, and while on his way back, he meets Ultron, who now has all the 6 Infinity Stones. The 8th episode explores the reality in which Ultron enacts his plan for world domination and destroys the Avengers.
In your universe, the Avengers stole the cradle and used it to create the hero, Vision. But in this universe, Ultron got his wish.
The episode kicks off with the Watcher explaining that, like so many other realities, this reality is also on its last legs. Black Widow is being chased by Ultron bots, and Hawkeye is there to help her with the threat. After the fight, Natasha reveals they have come to Russia to find a way to stop Ultron. The Watcher then explains how this reality came to be. Rather than the Avengers stealing the cradle that held Vision's body during the events of Age of Ultron, Ultron transfers his consciousness to the body and takes control of the Mind Stone, allowing him to lay waste to the world. However, after cleansing Earth, Ultron meets Thanos, who has come in search of the Mind Stone. But before he can hear the Mad Titan's pitch, Ultron kills him and takes the rest of the Infinity Stones and sets out on a mission of universe domination. Ultron's first stop is Asgard, which he promptly wipes off the map before heading to Ego, the Sovereign, and Sakaar to do the same thing. But a roadblock awaits him on Xandar in the form of Captain Marvel, who drives Ultron to the planet's core to destroy him. Unfortunately, Carol's plan fails, and Ultron destroys her along with Xandar. This was the last planet that was left to conquer. Now without a purpose, Ultron begins to feel a sense of dread, at least until he rises to an unfathomable level of consciousness and realizes the Watcher's presence. Not wanting to risk the Ultron escaping into the multiverse, the Watcher stops overseeing that reality and explains there is still hope for it to survive. Hawkeye and Black Widow arrive at the KGB archives, where she believes they can find a way to stop Ultron. And as they search, the Watcher returns and reveals to the audience the file on Arnim Zola is the key. Knowing Ultron is onto him, the Watcher considers interfering, but he decides against it. Eventually, Natasha finds the Zola file, just as Clint was ready to give up. However, when the Watcher returns to his multiversal domain, Ultron breaks through and attacks him. Meanwhile, in Siberia, Natasha and Clint find Zola's last remaining AI and convince it to help them in taking down Ultron. Unfortunately, because Ultron is not within the confines of the universe, Zola is unable to reach him. Clint and Natasha attempt to escape, but Clint dies in the battle when he sacrifices himself to allow his friend and the Zola bot to get out of the base. Elsewhere, the Watcher continues his fight with Ultron, but things take a turn for the worse when Ultron knocks the omnipotent being out of his multiversal observatory. The two battle across various realities, and while the Watcher gives his best effort, the Infinity Stone-powered Ultron proves too formidable a foe. Without any other option, the Watcher travels to Strange Supreme in another reality and asks for his help to defeat Ultron.
This should not be possible.
Oh, but anything is possible in a multiverse.
With the fate of the multiverse in jeopardy, the Watcher makes an impossible decision in the Season 1 finale. We find the omnipotent being, the Watcher seeking out the multiverse's greatest heroes in an effort to stop Ultron from ending each and every reality. The episode kicks off with Captain Carter, who's experiencing the events of Captain America the Winter Soldier in her reality. But her fight is cut short by the Watcher coming to recruit her. The Watcher then heads to the reality where T'Challa became Star-Lord to pick up the Wakandan Prince. The next destination on the Watcher's trip is an unfamiliar reality. Here journeying to Nidavellir, Watcher finds Tony Stark and Gamora working to build an Infinity Gauntlet. However, before they can finish their mission, the Watcher informs Gamora that he has chosen her. Killmonger is next on the list, with the Watcher recruiting him mere moments before Shuri and Pepper Potts bust into Wakanda's throne room to take him down. Finally, as Ultron bots attack his reality, Party Thor joins the team. The group arrives at the same pub that Captain Carter took Steve to in Episode 1, and they meet Strange Supreme before learning about their mission and being named the Guardians of the Multiverse. Gamora convinces everyone that they together can destroy the Infinity Stones using the Infinity Crusher. Strange Supreme takes the group to an uninhabited reality to prepare for the battle, but Thor quickly alerts Ultron of their presence by conjuring lighting. However, while Ultron thinks he can easily defeat these Watcher's recruits, Strange Supreme places a protection spell on everyone, granting them immunity to Ultron's attacks. Seizing the opportunity, T'Challa steals the Soul Stone right from under Ultron's nose. And as soon as Ultron notices, Strange Supreme opens a portal that brings the zombies from reality in Episode 5, including Zombie Scarlet Witch. Of course, Ultron has little difficulty defeating her along with other zombies, thanks to the Infinity Stones. But thankfully, the group eventually pins Ultron and gets the Infinity Crusher in place. But Ultron reveals that, in each reality, the Infinity Stones are different, making her weapon useless. Ultron then realizes that all he has to do is kill Strange Supreme to remove the protection spells, and so he launches a full frontal assault. Meanwhile, With the help of Captain Carter, Natasha hits Ultron in the eye with the arrow, which has Zola's code. This allowed Zola's algorithm to enter Ultron's body and destroy it from within. Unfortunately, as soon as the team stops to take a breath, Killmonger takes the Infinity Stones and tries to convince everyone they can fix their problems. But before Killmonger can enact his evil plan, Zola resurrects Ultron's body to reclaim the Infinity Stones. Realizing the Watcher didn't want the Infinity Stones destroyed, Strange Supreme traps Killmonger and Zola in a pocket dimension, thus neutralizing both the threats. Strange Supreme agrees to watch over the pocket dimension. The rest of the Guardians of the Multiverse head back to their realities, except for Natasha, now wanting to return to a world with no one in it. The Watcher takes Natasha to the reality Loki took over Earth that we saw in Episode 3. This gives her another chance to fight alongside the Avengers. And that concludes all you need to know about What If Season 1. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.